Welcome to Evaluating Your Board's Committee Structures and the Importance of the Governance Committee. This is the final session in the DCM Associates Spring 2022 webinar series. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, which is Dennis Miller, founder and chairman of DCM Associates. Dennis is a nationally recognized strategic leadership coach and executive search consultant. He has more than 35 years of experience working with nonprofit board leadership and chief executives across the country. Dennis is an expert in board leadership, board governance, leadership development, philanthropy, and succession planning. He is a sought-after motivational speaker, retreat facilitator, and leadership performance coach. So Dennis, if you want to get started, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, and hello, everybody. I'm looking forward to presenting this with you here. So also, I'm going to try to take as many questions as I can. Try to deal with them at the end, put them in the chat box if you can, and I look forward to all that. So let's sort of begin here. As Michelle said, we're going to talk about board structure, committee structure, and I wanted to start off with a frame here. And I'm going to plug a fabulous book that I read maybe 15 years ago. It's called Governance as Leadership, Reframing the Work of Nonprofit Boards. It came out of Harvard, I believe, but I think it was a gentleman, Richard Chait, William Ryan, and Barbara, Merrill that wrote the book. Let me see if I have Barbara's name correctly here. I want to make sure. Oh, Barbara Taylor, I'm sorry. And so, from my experience over, and I'm glad Michelle's limited me to 35 years, is there are 4 stages of board governance. Just like there are stages of organizational life, there are stages of our life cycle. I want to kind of go over this with you first because it set the framework for the discussion we're going to have. So as everybody is probably familiar, the first stage of a life cycle of a board, of a nonprofit board, is the founding board, right? So everybody knows your son or daughter has an illness and you start a foundation or a hospital, or you start a school and you start a university, you start anything. Founding board, everybody's familiar with that process, and the founding board does all the work. And then eventually you hire someone, and then sometimes there's the issue of founders can't let go control, so you have the founding syndrome, but that's pretty much the first stage. Second stage, which all of you are familiar with as well, again, is a fiduciary responsibility. That's a legal responsibility what nonprofit boards have. And I always ask people jokingly sometimes at a conference or a workshop about, why do you have a nonprofit board? And there's 2 reasons. Well, the main reason is because it's legally required, which is like, duh. And then obviously there's a reason because you can't achieve your success without the help of other people here. But fiduciary responsibility is quite simple. The board really represents the community that you serve. They're really representatives of the community, and their job is to make sure there's a financial framework, there's policies, procedures, compliance, audit, etc. Okay. Most boards evolved to the 3rd stage of it became sort of strategic business advisors. Every nonprofit sort of had a business plan or a strategic plan, and most boards operate out of someplace between 2 and 3. It's well-meaning, but they're still kind of passive in a point of view of providing strategic advice, business advice, reviewing the strategic plan, reviewing the business plan, overseeing the audits and compliance. But that's kind of where most boards are at. But as the book indicated 15 years ago, which is something that I believed in for a long time, the mature stage today of a nonprofit board is one of leadership. And that's when the board and you as a CEO are in partnership in leading the organization forward. It's not that they are micromanaging the board, that they're not, you're the paid CEO, you're the CEO of the organization, you're the paid employee here, but it's not to be, the board's by itself here. You want the board to feel a sense of ownership. You want the board to achieve your vision as much as you do. You want the board to be constantly asking ideas, bringing forth questions, challenging it. So you want to move to the level of board as governance, board as leadership, okay? And that's kind of important for this discussion here. Now, we're going to talk a lot about a couple of key committees that I think are important for you as a nonprofit organization, whether you're a college, hospital, behavioral healthcare organization, whatever you are, similar situations here. First of all, the simpler the better. I mean, most of you have some type of basic committees, a finance/audit committee. Some of you have an HR, compensation, personnel committee. Some of you have a lot of committees, you know, facilities committee, programs and services, all kind of range of stuff here. I think it's the simpler the better here. And I also say, which you'll know, that the greater the work of the committees, the more the committees do their job, the greater the board. And just because the bylaws say what committees you have doesn't mean that's what you have to have. You can change your bylaws at any time. Okay. And so again, you can have your basic committees, but we're going to talk about some recommended committees that I think every organization should have to help them achieve their vision. Oftentimes, the best words a board member can often hear is what? What is the best words that anybody can hear? Board meeting canceled. Because so many of the board meetings are kind of boring. There's not a kind of a goal. It's just meet as you meet here. And so you got to be careful how often you're meeting. And we're going to talk about that today, how often the board should meet and things like that. It's important that every committee have an annual goal that matches up to the overall goal of the organization. If you got a board committee, you want to make sure that that committee has at least a goal that you want them to achieve. Now, the most important thing here, and I believe, in board committee structure and everything else here, is you want the committees to be strategically aligned to achieve your vision. Now, I wrote a book, I don't know, many years ago, one of them, called The Power of Strategic Alignment, a guide to energizing your leadership and maximizing potential as a nonprofit. What I meant by that is, what's the difference between two organizations? Both have great causes, good people. One succeeds, one doesn't. The one that succeeds, everybody is aligned to their vision. They know what it is. It's inspiring them, and they're aligned to achieve it. They're not operating in silos here. So it's really kind of important for you all, for everybody, to take a look at the committee structure and just don't accept because that's the way it is. That's what we do here. And sometimes we have too many committees. All right, now. What are some of the things that the ideal competency board meeting? What are some of the things that are important about our board meetings? Well, first of all, how often shall we meet? The continuity requirement. Now, many boards, as a whole board, meet monthly. Some boards meet quarterly. Now, I think between you and me, based on my experience, I think if you got a good committee structure, your board can meet probably 6 times a year, every other month per se, unless you are a new organization or got really specific big challenges. I don't know that you need to meet monthly, but quarterly leaves a whole continuity issue out. It's very difficult to be like dating in a marriage. You see someone 4 times a year, it doesn't work out well. That's a tough one. I don't see that being effective at everything. That's really important here. Okay, so how often do you meet? Your committees, we'll get that in a second. Your committees can meet in between, but I think your board should meet at least 6 times a year. Sometimes there's a special meeting maybe for your budget or a strategic plan or retreat, but I think, you know, meeting quarterly is not enough, and sometimes monthly can be too much, but depends upon where you're at in your life cycle. You got to make sure it's all about the mission, right? I mean, you got to remind yourselves about the mission at all times here. And so one of the things I want to ask you is, has anyone ever met a client? And so I've been out of the hospital business, almost 20 years now with my firm, but I do remember bringing in medical specialists to present to the board for 10 or 15 minutes about, kind of what they did here. And I'll never forget one day where a medical oncologist was making a presentation to the board, and this was a board of, J&J executives, major pharmaceutical executives, et cetera, were going like, I didn't realize we did clinical trials. And so, I think it's important sometimes to bring in people that you have served as possible. Let them see the impact they're having. And I know people say, oh, I don't want to see those people. Well, I think it's important for the board to be reminded by why they are there, okay? Now, this is a term I created, the 50% rule. At all board meetings, full board meetings, I'm referring to, when I say board meetings, I'm referring to the full board. Yes, it's absolutely important you hear your committee reports, have the board chair or the staff member, leadership member, or team give an update on that committee, preferably the board member. But if you're just reporting on your committees only, it can be a lack of engagement, not become meaningful. And so here's what I recommend for everybody. On every board agenda, there should be at least a strategic question, a strategic issue, or a strategic challenge to discuss, such as the following. Okay, at our board meeting today, on May 18th, we're going to talk about what is the impact we're having in our community. And I want to lead that discussion as a board chair. I want to make sure that everybody on the board has a chance to say something. And as all of you know, there's usually 2 people on the board that don't shut up, and there's 2 people that don't say anything. It's your job as a board leader, or really the board's job, not the CEO's job, but to make sure that there is that there's constant discussion here. Having just committee reports is not enough to engage your board. I'll never forget this. Many years ago, one of my clients said, you know, I just can't engage, board chair told me, I just can't engage my board. I don't know what's going on. And I said, fine. So I met with board members, and I remember 4 of them telling me, if I don't go to a board meeting, I don't miss anything. So I said, let me go to a board meeting. I met at the board meeting. I got the CEO report update. I was kind of read to them, even though it should have been handed out ahead of time. I got a financial report. I got a facilities report. I got a gallery report. And then I got anything to come before the meeting. I'll see you in 3 months. I think it's important to have a discussion like, okay, so what's the value we're bringing to our community? What's our image in the community? Have a real meaningful discussion at every board meeting, okay? That will create this engagement. That's how you engage people here. Now, prior to all the electronics emails that we have today, thank God, to send packages out, but what you don't want is people that, you know, if you can imagine this, someone used to get the package in the mail with a rubber band around it, had your agenda, the board minutes, and some other report. They'd park the car, you know, walk up to the meeting, walk in, take the rubber band off as they walk in, the first time they're reading anything. You want to have everybody prepared ahead of time to kind of go in to their boardroom for discussion here. And one of the things that I really recommend too is that prior to every full board meeting, you as a CEO or as a board chair or vice chair, have a discussion even a week ahead of time about what are the key things we need to get done this week, or at the board meeting next week, what are the key things to get done so you kind of know what's going on here. But you don't want to create the rubber band theory of board members where they don't even know their role, they're just going through the motions here. Engagement. Too often, you know, we don't provide any training to board members. There's amazing that we require training certificates for Board of Education, but nothing in the nonprofit world. Some of you do the best you can, but an orientation program doesn't last a long time. I think it's important to remind people to keep their sense of humor and their intelligence in the room, not leaving at the door, okay? You don't want to have a lot of parking lot meetings where after the meeting is over, you see the 4 or 5 people grouping together. That means that things are not getting resolved, okay? So that's kind of some of the, a little bit summary here of some of the competencies about board meetings overall here. Now, there are three very important committees that I want to go over here, okay? Certainly the governance committee. Now, most of you know this as either been called the nominating committee or the board development committee. And it's evolved from the nominating committee because it does more than just nominate people to serve on the board or nominate people as officers, okay? It used to be then called board development, but that got kind of confused with fundraising development, things like that here. So to me, the governance committee is the most important committee a board of directors or board of trustees, whatever you call yourselves, can have. Again, it has no power to itself. It's not like the executive committee, which we'll talk about in a second, which is the second most important committee, and then we'll get into the strategic development here. So the governance committee, and I've articulated this, and there's a ton of information on our website, and you're going to get to these slides here. Clearly, you're going to want to assess, you know, the current and future board composition requirements and develop a pro-action plan or profile as it evolves. And I'm going to explain shortly my recommendation of how go about board recruitment in a little different manner than you've done before here. Clearly, the governance committee should be one obviously identifying, cultivating potential new board members. Periodically, want to review and update the roles and responsibility of the board to see, are you just fiduciary board? Are you a strategic advisory board? Or are you board functioning as leadership? And how do you bring governance, education, governance information to the board? Have you developed a reappointment criteria for board members? I'm going to explain that in a second here as well. About new board members, about assessing your own board's effectiveness. I'll address that later too, but I always say this: good boards evaluate their CEO, great boards evaluate themselves here, okay? You want to make sure the governance committee is focusing on both board and CEO succession planning. Yes, typically nominating a slate of officers for an annual meeting. Yes, you want to review your bylaws annually. It is amazing to me how many board members have never read the bylaws, or the bylaws haven't been changed in 50 years, whatever. And it's really important that the role of the governance committee here, very important that the governance committee, really takes responsibility to provide ongoing educational workshops and retreats. This is an active committee, no differently than any other committee of the board. This is important. However, this committee has no vote to itself and only can make recommendations to the board here. So these are the responsibilities, and I'm not trying to just play. I wrote a book, again, many years ago called The Nonprofit Board Therapist, a guide to unlocking your organization's true potential, that outlines very well the role of the board, the evolving role of the board, and all the things we're going to talk about here. And I just think that this committee, if you don't have one, is the most important to have here. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about recruitment and reappointment best practices. So, recruitment. There is nothing wrong at all with recruiting people we know. There's nothing wrong with that. Camaraderie, collegiality, all that's important here. But here's something I want to offer you that may be something new for you. I'd like you to have a discussion today to say, if we started our board today from scratch, what would be the ideal competencies, not skills, competencies we'd want on our board if we started today? And by competencies, you can see what I mean here. Inspirational leadership, an innovative strategic thinker, a decision maker, a collaborator, a brand builder, access to influence and wealth, a technology savvy person, passionate, diversity, change agent. These to me are competencies. And so these are the words I want you to start thinking about when you're thinking about who we need on a board. Ask yourself, do we have these competencies today? So now, here's what I said here. Personal characteristics are not the same things. So competencies are not skills like CPA, MD, attorney. What that comes in second. Now, here's what I want you to do. First thing I said, I want you to create an ideal matrix of characteristics, competencies, or attributes of your board. Then take your current board and what competencies do we have currently on the board, and the difference between 1 and 2 becomes your gap. So if you do this assessment, and it turns out hypothetically that one of the gaps is strategic thinking. Now you're starting to have a conversation with board members, people in the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, the local colleges, other foundations and corporations, etc., and say, listen, we are looking for some strategic thinker to join our board. Now you're starting to get 5, 6, 7, 8 names, 4 names, 3 names, whatever. After you have a conversation with them, then you say, but you know what? We got 3 great strategic thinkers, but we do not have a CPA, or we don't have a teacher, we don't have a social worker, or whatever. Then you apply skills. But don't go after the skills first. You want to make sure you have the competencies. And why is that important? What is it all about? If we're going to best serve all the people in our mission, whoever they may be, behavioral healthcare, children and family services, education, behavioral healthcare, intellectual disabilities, environmental, etc., whatever your mission is, we need the best and brightest to help us get there. So, next piece. Discuss the gaps, as I just said, with other board members and listen, helping identify new people by now talking about strategic competency, strategic innovative thinker, or it could be a change agent or someone who was influenced in the community. Then you kind of collect and discuss all of them, and then you rank them, and then you obviously then discuss their potential to serve on your board. but do competencies first, skills second. I hope that resonates with some. That many of you may be doing this, but for some that might be a little different. So what does that do? Well, now it gets you away from, oh, who do I know? And it's nothing wrong, again, with nominating people I know to be on the board with us. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, is that the kind of board composition you need to have in today's challenging times and dramatic changes and all the challenges and opportunities you have? We need to make sure we have the right competencies on a board. No differently, as leaders, you have these competencies on your leadership team, or competencies that I need to have into my firm's name. Same thing. We need competencies. You need competencies, doing the same thing for you. Okay. Now, as I said, and I'm going over this again, nominating individuals who are acquainted with board members is appropriate and encouraged. However, the ideal board consists of individuals who are first and foremost recruited based upon and agreed upon criteria, personal characteristics, attributes, or competencies, then followed by skills. Okay. I want to just comment upon board reappointment criteria. I'm not going to debate right now today about term limits, which I think are important to have. And I know many of you got board members been on the board for 40 years, and and bless them. However, I don't know how they can continue to have an impact for that long. I think you need a different story here. But whether you have term limits or not, you need reappointment criteria. What is that? So whether you have 2-year terms, 3-year terms, 1-year terms, whatever terms you have for board members, you should have a term. A couple of things is, you, on the beginning, make sure you set expectations of what you're expecting from each board member, including if there's discussion about any type of financial contribution or giving. So often we're afraid to bring it up because we bring it up, Jane or John won't even join our board, so we want to bring it up here. Okay, so you want board members to have a self-evaluation when their term is up. No different than we have tools when CEOs or executive team members are being evaluated, do a self-evaluation. So create a form. We have create forms about, ask them how they feel they're liking, what they like, what they don't like, what they would improve upon, but then evaluate them. Are they attending 3 out of every 4 meetings? Are they participating in a committee? Are they being a goodwill ambassador there? Do they have on their LinkedIn profile, do they have that they serve on your board? Are they passion enthusiastic and motivational, or are they motivated, or are they just sitting there, or they don't show up? Are they helping cultivate gifts, or are they making a contribution, whatever that might be? And this is beyond the scope of give or get, all that kind of stuff here. But clearly, that's a reappointment criteria. So that's kind of important. Now, second committee to me, that's very important, is the executive committee. Now, I believe this is the most overused committee in the world. A couple of things here. Many of you probably, maybe you don't, many of you probably have an executive committee scheduled every month. I think that's absolute waste of time. I have worked with national, international, and local organizations. I won't mention their name. I walked into a hotel one day. It was a big meeting of board members all coming in from a metropolitan area to a hotel for a nonprofit board. And the board meeting was supposed to meet at 6 o'clock. Everybody's in the lobby. What's going on? Well, the executive committee is meeting. It's like now 5:45, 10 to 6, 10 after 6. What's going on? And they eventually come out here. What happens is they're making decisions by themselves. So there's constant overuse of the executive committee. There's my world. There's two reasons for the executive committee to meet. One, you want to brainstorm ideas. And the executive committee should be made up, obviously, of the board chair, perhaps committee chairs, or other 1 or 2 key officers. Brainstorming ideas. We are thinking about a merger, affiliation. We're thinking about a new branding strategy. We're thinking about building something. That's fine, brainstorming. Or if the CEO wants to brainstorm, or the board chair wants to brainstorming ideas. And or with emergency powers, we need a bank resolution before our bond deal. So the board doesn't meet until the 15th. We need a resolution on the 10th, so we're going to meet today. I've seen so often that decisions are made in executive committee on a regular basis, and then they go into the board meeting, and it's like it's already done. So it's like you're just telling people what already happened here. If you're asking for a non-engaged board to lead to non-successful board members to a non-successful organization, that's what you're going to get. So evaluate how often your executive committee is meeting and why. I don't see the need to meet monthly. If you want to schedule one so they're meeting quarterly, that's appropriate, not the full board meeting appropriately. But it reminded it has two functions, right? It's got emergency powers when it's an emergency, but it's got reason for brainstorming ideas. Otherwise, if you overuse it, you gotta turn off your members here. Okay. This is a committee that I always recommend to our clients, and it's called the Strategic Development Committee. I'm not, finance and audit, you have to have, you need to have, I get it. You want to have a compensation committee, HR personnel committee, fine. But I believe if you initiate a strategic plan, a plan to achieve your vision, a plan for growth, and plan for branding, and a plan for everything, I believe, other than the governance committee and the executive committee, the most important committee a board can have is what I call a strategic development committee. Someone who's overseeing the strategic dashboard of your goals and objectives. How many objectives do you have that you're meeting the green light, you're going forward on? How many have a yellow light that you're making progress, but not a lot? How many you have a red light, just not making progress, you can't change the culture, whatever else. I've said this a million times, and if those of you who know me and have been at my workshops or been in meetings with me, I believe very much in visionary thinking and thinking about the future, about where you can go as an organization, where you can go as a board, and certainly where you can go as an individual. 90% of nonprofits in this country don't have a compelling vision statement. They got another mission statement, which is important to tell people who you are and why you exist. But very few vision statements articulate an inspirational vision about where you want to go and inspire people. And a vision statement should be 10 words or less, and you should have 2 to 3 strategic goals to achieve it here. So who in your board level is monitoring your achievement to your vision? If you're talking about program expansion development, that's where that committee can go. If you're talking about outcome measures, you're talking about achievements, I like to use the word impact. You know, I joke a lot, but it's probably true. The word outcomes came about from foundations and funders that stopped giving you money, so they wanted to see your outcomes. I mean, I want you to talk about the impact you're having on the lives of those you serve every day. And I want those that you serve every day to tell the story to you as well on your website and at your events. Today, it's about impact. What is the positive impact you have in the community? That benefits everybody, including people that will potentially invest in you. It's a committee that you want to have discussions about collaboration, affiliation, mergers. It's what about our branding strategy? Branding strategies today are not just left to the for-profit companies, right? It's not. You need a plan to brand your organization so people understand the positive things you're having. Branding should be to talk to your community about the positive achievements you're having. I will never, ever forget, I'm not going to mention the organization, I'll never forget an organization though, 15 years ago that I was asked to do a retreat on philanthropy. And I remember asking them if they could tell me their top 2 achievements at a retreat meeting, sitting in a restaurant. And it was, first person response was, we did our budget on time. I didn't say anything. The second person, we only spent so much money on fundraising. I told another person, talked about the fabulous program they did for kids. And I thank God. But we want to brand ourselves. And so where is that discussion happening? At your board meeting? Where? In finance? I don't think so. In your executive committee? Where? Maybe, probably not. Where is it? So I believe impact is where we want to go. Communicating impact, build your brand, inspires everybody, inspires every employee, every board member, every volunteer, everybody in the organization, impact you're having. Why is it that those organizations that successfully talk about the impact they're having, ones that generate the most funds to them, right? So I believe you want to have a strategic development committee. And so I think this is important to have. This committee, again, could meet 4 times a year. It's very possible this can meet 4 times a year. It doesn't have to meet certainly monthly, unless you're rolling out a strategic plan, but I think that's important here. Now, we're talking about board structures, we're talking about board committees, I talk about recruitment. I do want to talk a little bit about, measuring the level of engagement of the board, and then I'm going to open this up hopefully for questions here. I like to say, as I said before, good boards evaluate their CEOs and great boards evaluate themselves, okay? I believe you should have at least an annual board workshop or retreat, ideally best with an outside facilitator, but I can't overemphasize the most about investing in your board, okay? Now, just a little information. Again, we're going to send this out to you. We'll send a brochure. There's a ton of free information, tons of it, on our website, DennisCMiller.com, DennisCMiller.com, or DCM-associates.com, one and the same thing. There's a ton of stuff here. But here's what I do believe that every board should do at least annually, if not annually, every 2 years. We have a tool, and our tools are amazingly affordable. We have a tool that allows you not only to assess your board, and have them assess themselves, but assess your leadership team together. But this is good news. First of all, it's anonymous. So we do not know which name of anybody submitted the information. It also doesn't just give you, like, there's a lot of board assessment tools that give you a score. You were 3.5 on a scale of 1 to 5, and everybody else we did was a 3.2. Hallelujah. We don't know what to do. We have a tool that allows the board and the leadership to evaluate itself over a whole range of areas. How you doing in culture, vision and values, strategic goals, leadership, governance, branding, philanthropy, community relations, etc. We also provide a written report with recommendations on what you can do differently. And it's, believe it or not, that report covers these areas. And you should do this. Find another source, but mission, vision, values, and culture. How are you doing for that? Strategic goals. It is amazing to me when I find out how many people on boards don't even know what the goals are. How is your CEO board partnership working out? How is executive leadership, governance, and such impactful programs, branding, philanthropy? And this report is $975, regardless of how many board members you have. Now, we're going to send out to you, we have, besides our executive search division here, we have an Institute for Transformational Nonprofit Leadership and Board Performance. We have a ton of tools for you. Again, that we have this tool, the Executive Leadership Assessment, which I just mentioned. We have an annual CEO evaluation tool that allows the board, don't have to fax things anymore, email and make phone calls to follow up. It's easy to do. We handle the whole thing. Just give us the emails. It also allows the CEO for a self-evaluation tool for $975. And when you buy two together, it's a $500 discount. It's amazing. We also have online board courses, online how to become a high-performing board, leadership courses and all that stuff, assessment tools, 360 tools, group facilitation and coaching, all that stuff here, plenty of things here. What I want to do right now is go back and take some questions here because we're getting on to about the 40-minute mark here. And I wanted to see kind of where we are, Michelle, with so let's see, we take a question here. So yes, everybody will get a copy of these slides. Is the book free to today's participants? We have over 200 participants, so the books are not free, but they're very inexpensive. And I would just say go on to, Barnes & Noble or Amazon. But if you want to buy them in quantity for your board members, contact me and I'll work something out for you, no problem. Here's a question that I get a lot. Who has the authority to nominate committee members? I mean, who nominates people to the committee? And I normally like to see if there's anybody that can ask you this, but here's what I'd say. The committee chair should be the one recommending to the board chair. People on the committee should be a conversation between the committee chair and the board chair. However, a couple of things here. It's very appropriate to invite people that are not on the board to serve on committees. It's a fabulous farm system. So you could have someone like, is that CPA, nurse, teacher, social worker, psychologist, whatever, social media, technology person, be on a committee that doesn't serve on the board. Is a great way to know them. Okay. Number two, your board chair, or whether you call board chair or board president, same to me. They should have the authority solely to themselves to appoint who is the chair of each committee. They should not need the vote of the board. That should be their authority. Now, there's a big issue that it may appear that hasn't come up here again today, but it's a big emphasis on all of us here, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, what we call belonging. It is absolutely vital when you are seeking out board members and seeking competencies and understanding what they are. And also, when you're factoring in competencies and people on the board, you need to do an extra effort job to make sure that you're representing the community you serve and have those people on the board. That's vital. It can't be just, the same old friends, same old people. And so DEI belonging is vital to this process here. But if you don't start with competencies, you won't have a way to get there and do that here. Okay. And so I understand that, your board sometimes have longstanding donors and friends. I think it's fine, but I see this 1,000 times in my life, easily. I see it dozens of times each year, where I saw one organization that literally had every past president of the board was on the board, the full board. And why was that? Because they were hoping they were going to give them money. But if you've got people that have been the board president for 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you're not getting new thinking. And so I believe tremendously in keeping the talent on your board, but find a way. Example, you can have a retiring board president serve on the governance committee. Doesn't have to be a board member. Keep him or her involved in a governance committee. You want to keep this institutional intelligence and knowledge on the board, but you got to bring in fresh blood. I've seen this with trade associations, where everybody on the board was the past president of that board, and where did they get new blood? They didn't get it until we brought it to their attention here. So I think it's kind of really important. I see another question here. Any tips for non-executive leadership to influence board participation training? Yeah, I think you, as talked about the governance committee, I think every board today should be having training in DEI and belonging. Everybody, bring in an expert. We got experts, clearly. Bring in your own experts, whatever it be. We got experts, reach out to us, we'll do it for you. We do training seminars. It's about really making sure that we are being real, being who we are. If we're serving different communities, make sure that we have people in that community on our board. It's vital. So one of the things that I see such resistance to over the years is with boards who are so meaningful and you do such fabulous work as nonprofit organizations, you do terrific work. But I see that there's a fear of assessments. How do I ask my board chair, I want to do an assessment? He or she's going to take it the wrong way. They think I'm going to be critical of them. We need to create sort of an ongoing learning culture, do we not? Don't we have our children always ongoing? We have them in preschool. We have them in after-school programs, don't we? We get them involved in soccer and cheering and Little League and Scouts and all that stuff. Ongoing learning culture. The same thing for our organization, the same thing for our board, same thing for our leadership team. We've got to create an ongoing culture of learning. When I see this, it's just the resistance to change. The CEOs, I wrote an article once, it said, the nonprofit CEO dilemma, how do I tell my board they're not performing well? It's not easy. But we have to have these conversations because at the end of the day, okay, where our job is to serve those we serve. And to serve them well, we need high-performing leadership teams, we need a high-performing CEO, and we need a high-performing board. So you should be constantly having ideas and suggestions. And something else, through your state association or your national association or your county association, you want to invite a couple of board members to join you to meet others. Have a meeting, invite people from another hospital foundation, another medical center, another college, another behavioral, have a chance to meet. What are you guys doing? I came back a month ago from the big council in Washington, the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. Like 7,000 to 8,000 people attend the conference. a lot of board members, all those things, social current, disability, all the things, constantly learning here. Okay, so and we will provide, again, on our website, we'll provide as much links as we can to you. But I see, there's a link from Anchor and things like that here. So, we're happy to, with Anchor is a fabulous trade association in Alexandria, Virginia. And so that's kind of the stuff here. I want to see if we can, Michelle, if there's any other questions, if people could either, I don't know if I can see everybody's name.
I've got one, Dennis, that came in early in the session, so I want to make sure we don't lose it. Someone asked early on, they're interested in benchmark assessment structures for board effectiveness. Is there one generally known or generally accepted benchmark structure accepted across nonprofits?
Yeah, and our leadership, our leadership and board governance assessment brings in national best practice, 100%. So when you see a report from us, you will see and give a report as to where you are compared to best practices. Absolutely. This information has been accumulated by me and people on my team for over the past 40 years. So the answer is yes. Our assessment tools don't just give you a score, it gives you where you're at, but gives you recommendations of where to need to go. So the answer is our reports will give you, you'll get a sense of where you are at the best practice through our assessment reports. And again, it's not here about selling our stuff here, but there's so many discounts when you buy two things at a time. So I've got a lot of clients that, Michelle, you know this, will get we'll do the board assessment, leadership assessment, and then buy the how to become a high performing board at the same time.
Right.
Those two together cost only $1,450, and the course lasts a year for 25 people. It's like $30 a person. It's amazing. So, when they get from us the brochure, when they get from us the linkage to this here, all these things we have are based upon 40 years of experience of a lot of people, including myself. And it's all best practices. It is all best practices here. Whether it's best practice on branding, best practice on governance, on leadership, on philanthropy, on program development, is all best practices here. And so I don't want to get into every specific thing here, but clearly there are best practices out there about what boards are doing. And I started off today saying the best practice of boards doing today is when the board feels they're in leadership with the CEO, and the CEO feels secure enough and comfortable enough and secure enough to want to sort of share that. It's a shared leadership as well. Even though you're a paid officer and you're the face of your organization, it's a sharedness. And you want to know that, hey, you know what? That board member went home from your dinner meeting and called you next day and said, you know what? We got to talk to Sue. I want you to introduce to someone else here. That's what you want. That's a best practice. Meeting, structure, having a strategic development committee, executive committee, having a governance committee is best practice. So yes, we have them all, 100%.
Dennis, someone's writing in, and I'm tired just thinking about this question. They have 57 members of their board of directors, and it looks like it's a requirement based on their structure, but they're looking for ideas, any additional ideas you might have for managing a very large board.
I see that, Laura. Most people, I'm imagining, that's some form of governmental entity, most likely, appointed maybe by the freeholders or a governor or mayor or something like that, many times. When you have that many directors, then I recommend a different approach. Then I recommend an 18-person executive committee of the board, which is against everything I said when I started about the executive committee, because it's just too big to deal with. It's just too big. So then I'd say you should have an executive committee. Now, I know in the hospital world that I don't do any work in hospitals anymore. I was there for 25 years. But I know a lot of hospital boards that have like 50 people on the board because they got all the, former Yankees and Dodgers and athletic figures and influential people in the business community. But they're there for their money and for their names. They have a working board here. I think in a place where you have 57 directors, you're going to need to have a smaller working committee. And I said I would call the executive committee of about a third of that, and to kind of get things done. Report. That's my recommendation. Here's another thing. Listen to. Small boards want to be bigger. Bigger boards want to be smaller. On average, depend upon your revenue size, but average board sizes are, sort of like 12 to 15 based upon your revenue size, about 12 to 15. when you start getting above 18 members on your board, that's a big board. That's a lot of people to deal with. That's a lot of individuals to deal with. You know, if you got 4 or 6 people on your board, that's not a lot. But if you're a small organization, starting with 4 or 6 is not bad. So it's not the number per se, but it's a level of competence and engagement. But it's as you grow, you can grow the board. But having 57 is a challenge to work with. Absolutely. Now, there's something else comes up here. There are a lot of organizations, nonprofit organizations, that have both a foundation and their main organization. Okay. I'm dealing with one right now, and we're going to be recruiting for that person for the foundation here. I do think someone from the foundation board, if not the foundation board chair, should easily be automatically as sort of serving on the main board for communication purposes. So you want, if you got a separate foundation board, not just a development committee, you got a foundation board in your organization, I think the chair of that foundation should also serve on your main board. Okay, that's some of the things I think about here. And so again, I am happy, Michelle. I know we got a lot of people here, but anybody who wants to email me, dennis@dcm-associates.com. Anyone wants to email me and a free 30-minute consultation over the next few weeks, send me an email. I'll be happy to chat with you, give you any free advice as I can. I'm not going to worry about it go into 33 minutes or 35 or 40 minutes here. I will try to accommodate you, but I think it's kind of important for you to feel like you got a resource here, and I want to be that for you. And there's a lot of people on this call that I see, a lot of people that I know well, that I respect well, that are on the call that also provide a lot of stuff here. Let's see here. Any recommendations for a composition or for function of nonprofit spin-off from other for-profit companies? Dr. Hopkins here, I think that it depends here. I think if you got a for-profit spinning off a nonprofit here, I think I need to know more about the agenda, the goal for that committee. But I think if you got a for-profit spinning off a nonprofit, you want to have the same thing. That board needs to, is it representing the community you serve, or is it representing your own profitable interests? You got to debate about that, and we'll take care of it another time. I have time. Anything else that we, any other questions of, I want to guide here. Mr. Weissman over there, my friend over there. Any questions, Jay? Any questions of anybody else here?
Dennis, I have a question. Is there what are your thoughts on board members serving on multiple committees? Should there be a limit to how many, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
No, it's a good question, but there's another question, Michelle, that's excellent. Okay, so let me just, here's what. I see people like in the corporate world serving on 12 boards. You can't serve on 12 boards well. Here's what I tell people when I'm recruiting people. If I'm the CEO of my organization or the chair of my organization, which I've been both, I want us to be one of your top 3 priorities. It may be your church or your temple, it may be your undergraduate university, but if you're on multiple 8 or 9 boards, you can't serve us well. So if you're the corporate director of government affairs or things like that, and I see you on every nonprofit committee in the state, that's not really good. However, go back to your question, having, again, here's what you got. If you got 4, here's what I see a lot. You got 6 people on the board and they have 6 committees. Well, you better get a lot of non-board members on it. I think it's okay to serve on maybe 2 committees, but more than that, that means that everybody else is not participating. So example here, if you're serving on the board itself as 1, if you're serving, you can serve on the governance committee, you might be on the, maybe 2, other than the board itself, but serving on more than that, you got to strain yourself out here. And I've seen it on my end, back in my medical center days. I've had board members that spent so much time at the medical center that I think they put their marriages and business at risk because I liked it so much. I've had colleagues tell me their board chairs are retired and want an office in their building. I tell them, God forbid. No, lock the doors. I think you gotta, use, I think this is common sense. I think this is really, really common sense here. So about, yeah, bylaws here. I think, I don't know about, so here's a couple of things here. Absolutely, it's totally appropriate to have non-board members serve on committees. You can have that in your bylaws. Absolutely, 100% about that. But then again, that's coming from a process that a board member who's a member of your, who's chairing your committee is making a recommendation to your board chair. And I have no problem presenting that to the board. I'm just saying a board chair of a committee has to have certain authority, just as the board chair of your organization has to have authority to appoint people who chair the committees. He or she does not need to ask for a vote of approval because that's never going to change anything. So absolutely encourage people from serving on the committee. So that's a great, by the way, if you're a small organization and you've got 6 people on your board and you need 6 committees, you'll be dead with all the committee serving. That's where best way to get people, invite them to the table, see how they perform, see how they function. It's like a training ground. It's like a probationary period. If they do well, bring them onto the board, 100% here. That's fine. We have any other questions? I know we got a few. I hope as I tried to cover today, the key things, and this is what I want to leave you with. Strong committee structure means a strong board. Strong committee structure is strong. Just because that's the way you've been doing it for 10 or 15 years, if that's the way you've been doing it, doesn't mean that's the way you should do it. Just because it says so in your bylaws, you can change your bylaws with a vote. I think it's important to have a governance committee. I think it's important to have but understand the executive committee and its powers and its limits. And I've seen what I call the inner and outer board, when there's the inner board where everything's made at the executive level and you go to the board meeting and all decisions are made. Then what do you need me for? What do I chop liver? And I think it's important to have what I call a strategic development committee that oversees the whole strategic plan, vision achievement, branding, all that stuff here. We all need finance and HR, I get it. But sometimes we have committees that are so minute and just overseeing every little detail in management that just seems like too micromanaging to me, okay? I mean, if the board approves the budget, are you having a committee? Do you got to approve every time you hire someone? I hope you don't. So those little things here we got here. Let's see here. Damon, I hope I answered the question about the bylaws, but I think there should be, if you have it in your bylaws and you have it in your D&O officer's policy, that non-board member can serve on the committee, shouldn't be any problem whatsoever. It's a very common thing for board recruitment. Should be very common. I see my friend Julia Orlando over there. Hello, Julia. Is there anybody else that I haven't, or someone else would like a question? I have time, so I want to see if there's anything else here. But again, board structure is important. Board committee structure, the same old committees over and over again, don't matter. Mr. J, are you agreeing with me, Mr. J? Okay. Julie, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Dennis. This was really helpful. One of the questions that I have is I am creating a culture of ongoing learning, but now I've instituted Boardable, so there is actually a place where we can upload articles and things and recordings.
Right.
However, I'm trying to integrate training, but not take a lot of time. People are busy. What's your recommendation on kind of a good way to do that?
Well, a couple of things. I don't want this to sound self-serving, but it's going to be a little bit. Here's what. So I will talk to you offline. No, seriously. I created a course, and I'll just say why I created the course, because I didn't want to write any more books for a while. But we have a course, Julia, that it costs $975 for all your board members. It lasts a year. The course deals with 8 modules on every aspect about board governance, board leadership, how to deal with difficult board members, all the things we talked about. But there's 8 modules. So a board member can, do it 5 minutes a week, not spend 3 months taking a course at the university. And my suggestion would be, Julie, then to say, here's an example. At our June meeting, we're going to talk about board recruitment. So look at the module 6, remind yourself about module 6 here. I think you need to have sort of on, and if they can take the course on their tablets, on their phone, at their office computer, just easier. Now, there's a lot of stuff out there, but I would say, take any of the articles we have, Julia, on our website,
Okay,
any of the webinars, you get them for free. Take them. I don't need anything. Jay Weissman steals them all the time anyway, so I'm always joking, Jay. It's real, those Weissman guys, they're always taking things like that, Then you got to watch out for Keith Green over there. He takes them the same thing. No, seriously though, I say take, and everywhere, yes, post articles. I mean, I get articles with my colleagues. We share them with each other from all over the place here. I think all that stuff here is stuff here. But the feedback we got, and Julie, if you send me an email, I'll give you stuff back here.
okay,
The feedback from the course is great because it's modules. Now we are doing something for the fall, a little different. Both for our executive leadership course and for our board course, we're going to have a little more interaction. So there's going to be like a cohort. So I'm going to make that, whether it's every other Wednesday at 6 o'clock, there's going to be a cohort of people for discussing it. But we have all that here. But just us, but other people, ours, because I know how good it is. But if you find other stuff here, but it's quick. Board members are so busy, you can't give them like a books to
Right.
read. But having you say, listen, here's an online course. It's an hour. Can you take this course over a period of 2 months?
okay.
You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Keith Green, please.
Yeah, Dennis, I had a question about how do you, in that course you were just speaking about, is there a module in there that talks about the board and DEIB?
No, but I'll tell you what, here's what, the course was done 2 years ago, okay? But here's what, Keith, contact me. We have fabulous people on our team, including Dr. Yvonne Stiles, Susan Hashton, Jim McGurk, and Terry Cahill, along with Alan Weisberg, who's a former chief learner for J&J. We have fabulous people that do workshops on diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do, there was a workshop or webinar about a month ago in our series on that. And so what we're going to do, and Michelle's still here, we're going to send to everybody all the webinars we did, and that should be including that, Keith. But if you look at our website, and for sure I'm going to be that you're going to get with this, the PowerPoint slides, we have a ton of experts. We have literally 4 or 5 experts in the world of diversity, equity, inclusion, 100%.
Okay, I do that work too, but like sometimes your street credit with your own board is not the same as an outsider coming in.
Well, there's both. I mean, people can come in and do it on site or do it virtual. We've done a ton of virtual. We've done a lot of that here.
Okay.
So it's easier for us to do it virtual, but we can do that for you. Well, you got to reach out to us. But I think if you go to the website and see and look at now, we just updated our brochure. So when you get this brochure, it's been fairly updated.
Okay.
But I'm happy to put you in touch with the right people in our company to do that, and they're excellent. They're phenomenal. They're wonderful people. Really
All right. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, let's see here. I thank you all. I know different times in the country, 11 o'clock if you're out there surfing in California, it's 2 o'clock if you're in traffic in New York City, and et cetera, et cetera. I do thank you all. I want to just say this here. I'm so thankful to all of you for what you do. This country's going through a very difficult, divided time, and every one of you is making a difference in trying to make lead lives different. Without you, I don't know where we'd be. So I want to thank you on behalf of that. I'll talk to you soon. Be in touch, and God bless everybody. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.